For nearly 7 centuries, the true origin of the Black Death, the catastrophe that wiped out up to half of Europe's population, remained history's greatest forensic puzzle. Theories were endless, but the scientific proof, the single geographical origin, was locked away. Until now. For centuries, the Black Death remained a ghost in Europe's history, a cataclysm that arrived without warning and departed without explanation. It wiped out as much as half the population, reshaping society, faith, and the future of the continent. But its origin, the very source of the Yersinia pestis bacterium, was a mystery that endured for nearly 700 years. Where did this unparalleled killer come from? The answer, it turned out, was not to be found in the plague-ravaged cities of Europe, but thousands of miles to the east, in a place where history was written not in books, but in stone. The search for Patient Zero led investigators away from the familiar ports of Genoa and Messina and deep into the heart of the continent. Their focus shifted to a network that had long connected East and West, a conduit not just for silk and spices, but for ideas, cultures, and, as it would tragically turn out, for disease. The key wasn't found in Europe, but along the historic Silk Road. Here, nestled in the foothills of the Tian Shan Mountains, scientists uncovered a crucial piece of the puzzle. They focused on two small Christian cemeteries dating to the mid-1330s. This was a full decade before the plague began its relentless march across the West, a time when Europe was still oblivious to the storm gathering on the horizon. The grave sites, known as Kara-Jigach and Burana, held the remains of a community that had suffered a sudden and catastrophic spike in mortality in the years 1338 and 1339. This was no ordinary tragedy. The sheer number of deaths in such a short period pointed to an extraordinary event. The archaeological team knew they were onto something significant. The location was a nexus point on the Silk Road, a place where traders, travelers, and soldiers from across Eurasia would have converged. If a new, virulent pathogen were to emerge, this was exactly the kind of environment where it could first take hold and begin its journey outward. The clues lay buried beneath the soil, waiting for modern science to unlock their secrets. And the first clue was explicit. Among the headstones, a handful bore inscriptions that were chillingly direct. Written in Syriac script, they memorialized the dead not with vague platitudes, but with a specific and ominous declaration. The inscription on the tombstones hinted at the cause of death: pestilence. This single word, carved in stone nearly 700 years ago, was the first tangible link, a signpost from the past pointing directly to a deadly epidemic. It was a contemporary account of a disaster, recorded by the very community that was being devastated. For the researchers, this was the equivalent of a historical smoking gun. It confirmed that a lethal outbreak had occurred in this exact location, at this exact time. The question was no longer a plague had struck here before reaching Europe, but whether this was plague, the ancestral strain that would go on to become the Black Death. The answer would require moving from the windswept valleys of Kyrgyzstan into the sterile environment of the modern laboratory to see if the dead still had one final story to tell. The gravestones from 1338 and 1339 provided a time, a place, and a cause of death: pestilence. But for centuries, this was merely a tantalizing clue, a whisper from the past. To prove this was the source of the Black Death, researchers needed more than stone inscriptions. They needed a confession from the killer itself. The challenge was immense: how to find definitive biological evidence from victims who had been buried for nearly 700 years. The answer lay hidden in one of the most durable parts of the human body: a tiny, natural time capsule capable of preserving the most fragile of secrets. The investigation moved from the dusty foothills of the Tian Shan Mountains to the sterile, pressurized air of a state-of-the-art ancient DNA laboratory. Here, the focus narrowed to the teeth of the individuals exhumed from the Kara-Jigach and Burana cemeteries. Teeth are a geneticist's treasure chest. Their hard enamel shell acts as a formidable barrier, protecting the soft dental pulp within from the relentless decay of time and the environment. It is in this pulp, rich with blood vessels, that the genetic fingerprints of any pathogens present at the time of death can be preserved. The process is one of surgical precision, a fight against an invisible enemy. Contamination. Even a single stray skin cell or a breath from a modern researcher could corrupt the ancient sample with new DNA, rendering it useless. In a clean room environment, scientists meticulously drilled into the tooth roots to access this precious material. From the powder, they began the delicate process of extracting DNA fragments. They weren't just looking for human DNA, they were hunting for something else, the ghost of an ancient microbe. Using a technique known as shotgun sequencing, they didn't target a specific gene. Instead, they captured and sequenced every single piece of genetic material present in the sample. Human, bacterial, viral, anything and everything. This generated a colossal data set, a digital soup of millions of fragmented genetic codes. The next step was a feat of computational archaeology. Sophisticated software sifted through this vast library of data, comparing the fragments against known genetic databases. The team was searching for a very specific signature, the DNA of the plague bacterium. For weeks, the analysis continued. They filtered out the human DNA, then the common soil bacteria and other environmental noise. And then they found it. Not just a trace, but a clear, unambiguous signal. Multiple individuals from the Kyrgyz graves tested positive for. The killer had been identified. But the final, most critical question remained. Was this the same strain that devastated Europe? By reconstructing the bacterium's full genome, the scientists could perform a genetic paternity test on a historical scale. They compared the 1338 genome from Central Asia with dozens of other historical and modern plague strains. The results were breathtaking. The phylogenetic tree, the family tree of plague, revealed the story with stunning clarity. The strain found in the Central Asian graves sat at the very base of a massive branching event. It was the direct ancestor of the strains found in plague victims from London to Barcelona, from Italy to Russia a few years later. This wasn't just plague strain, it was ancestral strain, the patient zero of the European pandemic. The genetic data confirmed that the Black Death's Big Bang, the event that gave rise to the killer that would wipe out half of Europe, happened right here, in this specific region, just before 1338. The greatest killer in history had finally revealed its birthplace. For nearly 700 years, it has stood as history's most terrifying chapter, a spectre that swept across Europe, leaving a trail of unimaginable devastation. They called it the Great Mortality, the Great Pestilence. We know it as the Black Death. Between 1346 and 1353, this catastrophic pandemic claimed the lives of up to 200 million people, erasing as much as half of Europe's population. It shattered empires, rewrote the social order, and instilled a profound existential fear that echoed through generations. The sheer scale of the tragedy was matched only by the enduring mystery of its origin. For centuries, historians, scientists, and archaeologists debated its starting point. Theories pointed to the vast plains of the Mongol Empire, the bustling ports of the Black Sea, or even a spontaneous eruption from an unknown corner of the continent. The question of where haunted our understanding of this pivotal moment in human history. Where did the first spark ignite this world-altering inferno? The trail had long gone cold, the secrets seemingly buried forever beneath the dust of the medieval world. But history, we are now learning, does not always keep its secrets. Now, after centuries of speculation, the mystery is solved. The answer was not found in dusty European archives or the chronicles of medieval scribes, but within the very fabric of life itself. Through the remarkable power of modern paleogenetics, the ghost of the pandemic has finally been traced. A team of researchers combining historical records with cutting-edge scientific analysis has pinpointed the precise geographic and temporal cradle of the Black Death. The evidence, extracted from the teeth of victims buried nearly 7 centuries ago, is irrefutable. Ancient DNA has confirmed that the single ancestral strain of the bacterium responsible for this unparalleled catastrophe began its deadly journey in the foothills of Central Asia, near Lake Issyk-Kul in what is now Kyrgyzstan, around the year 1338. This single explosive revelation completely reroutes the accepted history of the world's most notorious pandemic. It provides a definitive ground zero, a starting point from which we can now trace the tendrils of trade, migration, and ecology that carried this killer across the globe. The discovery is a monumental testament to scientific persistence, proving that even after 700 years, the tools of the present can unlock the darkest and most profound secrets of the medieval world, offering clarity where there was once only shadow. Please subscribe to our channel History Documentary Hub for more informative content.